The following podcast contains strong language. Hello and welcome back to the Ciné Rambles podcast. You're listening to Nick
and Andrew,
and we're here with your weekly fix of film-related ramblings. How are you doing, Andy?
Yeah, fine.
Good. Right. We've not got any correspondence or news in this week's episode, so we're going to go straight on to a little point Andy has to make about a Netflix series.
Yes, it's called Magic for Humans.
Yay!
Yay. So it's I think they're on series 3 now, actually. It's a Netflix series about, a magician. He's called Justin Willman, and he just goes around and does a load of magic tricks and stuff. And it is good. He's really funny, and he's a dad, so he shoves loads of dad jokes in there, and it is really good. So there is a lot of positives about it. Just the only thing I want to point out, right, is that I really, really struggle to believe any of the magic tricks. And I feel like this is always the case with any sort of magic show. Do you know Dynamo as well?
Yeah, I never watched it, but I was familiar with it.
And David Blaine and all of that crap. It's like...
You're a bit of a skeptic then.
Yeah, well, I'm very skeptical because it's like... There's some bits, especially in Magic for Humans, that just look like CGI, But they're so... I mean, this could be a testament to his magic, but they look so convincing that they can't be real, He does this thing where he, pulls this rope through his body, and it's like... I feel like that would be so much easier to CGI than to do in real life, that I feel like he's just CGI'd, hired an actor to be like, oh my god, that was amazing. And that was it.
Well, I mean, that sort of defeats the point, though, doesn't it?
It does, but it just... Maybe I'm just very skeptical, but it feels like it's very hard to believe in any of it because it's... I don't know, because of the format it's presented in.
It's interesting, though, because it brings up an interesting point about, because magic's sort of like the ultimate practical effect, really. Not only doing an effect for real and make it convincing, but doing it live in front of an audience. So you can't even use camera trickery.
Yeah.
And then you see CG now, and you're right, it is harder to believe something when anything is possible visually now that we have computers.
I'll tell you what's not possible visually, though, Nick.
What?
And that is to CGI a bunch of lions singing songs. That's why they had to train them.
Exactly. I mean, the people say the technology's there, but it just isn't. There's nothing beats the magic and the sort of the real craftsmanship of getting a bunch of lions, taking some actors, turning them into lions, and just teaching them to sing.
Yeah.
Have you seen there's a new documentary coming out called Hear Me Roar, which is all about was it Michael Jordan who became a lion?
Who?
Was it Michael Jordan? I can't remember the actor.
Donald Glover?
Yeah, Donald Glover. Let's go.
Fucking hell. Michael Jordan's a basketball player.
There's an actor called Michael... Or was it Michael B. Jordan? There's an actor called Michael B. Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan is an actor.
Oh, no, sorry, I forgot his middle initial. Excuse me.
But Michael Jordan, Michael B. Jordan are very different people.
Sorry. Anyway, whoever was in Lion King, the one who turned himself into a lion, there's a whole documentary coming out on Netflix. I think it's a 10-part miniseries. But I think as far as documentary series goes, it's probably going to be up there with, The World at War or Showa.
Obviously.
It's going to be absolutely a classic documentary. I can't wait.
Just speaking of that quickly, as much as you hate Disney Plus, there's actually some really, really good behind-the-scenes documentary stuff on there. There's one that, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about the props, all the props from all the Disney films and all the classics and stuff. And there's a guy...
Well, the animated ones.
Yeah. Well, here's
this drawing we have of a chair.
But they've got, a lot of the stuff they use, they have the Jack Skeleton, the original puppet. Or is it a puppet? I don't know.
Yeah, well, an armature is the correct word. But...
Yeah. And they had that, and they were talking about that, and the history of it, and they had all this stuff from the original Mary Poppins, and they talk about it, and it's It was really interesting. Like, some of those little bits, behind the scenes bits, are really good.
I mean, I've no doubt that they are, but I refuse to believe that those weren't available already on DVD.
Yeah,
And
probably.
the point is, I'd rather, again, I'd prefer to spend like a couple of quid on a DVD and then own it forever, and no matter what happens, I will always have access to it, than pay £5 a month to be continued to allow to watch it, and then have that revoked at any time. I don't know. Straight like I don't mind Netflix and Prime, but like I would never
Slap
rely
a
on
Disney
them.
logo on it, and you'll go all over it.
Well, no, but it's a streaming in general. Like I don't mind watching films on
I
it, but I treat it as a rental service. I would never
Yeah,
rely on them to and be like, oh, I don't need this copy of this film on DVD anymore because it's on Netflix. I don't trust that.
yeah. I don't like everything's being a subscription service now. I like owning something.
Exactly, yeah. Because that's the thing. We don't, in the olden days we paid to own it, but now we pay to rent it with everything. Really, we pay to be allowed to use it,
Yeah,
and it's also more expensive.
it is. Well, then I suppose you get access to a lot of things, though, don't you?
Yeah. Again, I treat Netflix much more close to like a rental service than anything.
Because if you compare it to Blockbuster, where you £4 or £5 a week could go and rent one thing,
Yeah.
whereas you pay £5 a month and you get thousands of things. So it's good in that sense.
Well, I really miss Love Film, which is what the reason I have my colossal DVD collection is that started after Love Film went down. Because for £10 a month, I think it was, you could literally rent as much as you want based on how fast you can watch and return them off by post. It was free post, and they had like an absolutely enormous reserve of DVDs. Like any film you could think of, no matter how obscure, they had a copy of it somewhere, which is great. And that's how I watched a lot of like all the sort of the classics when I was watching film. I did all through like Love Film, and like even Amazon, not even just Amazon Prime, but like the full like paid for version of Amazon. We have to pay for each one. That's still the library. I think it's getting better every day or whatever, but it's still not as vast as Love Films. There's still stuff I can't find that I watched on
I
Love
thought
Film.
someone bought Love Film out, didn't they?
Amazon did buy it, but then Love Film got closed because no one does DVD post anymore, which is
Right.
stupid.
Well, is it?
Well, no, but right, it's fine. But in that case, Netflix and Prime have to have the libraries to rival it. And the problem with it as well
Yeah.
with Netflix certainly is they're constantly rotating it, so you can't rely on things being there.
You,
But if you've got a
true.
physical library, but like we were talking about Hausu earlier, the Japanese film,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, we can't find a copy anywhere. I watched that on Love Film. They had tons of copies of it. Rented it, £10 a month. Love Film was great.
Well, why don't you start your own DVD rental business and see?
With the number of DVDs I own, I could.
Yeah.
I mean, I could start charging you for borrowing my DVD.
No, can't do that. Anyway, what were we talking about before we?
I think we were talking about Magic for Humans at one point.
Oh wow, that was really out of nowhere. Okay.
Okay. So I've got an interesting discussion lined up. Well, I hope it's interesting. I don't know.
Okay.
But I've been talking with my friend Poppy recently about animal cruelty on film, particularly in older films. Because I mean nowadays, especially with CGI, it's a lot cleaner. Like most times,
We had this conversation about Call of the Wild, whatever.
yeah, we did. Because so Poppy recently watched Cannibal Holocaust, not realizing what it was.
Wow.
Yeah. But I was chatting to her about so obviously it's a very controversial film for those who don't know, but while there was a lot of stuff about it potentially being a snuff film, which they had to prove in court that it wasn't, which is what a lot of people think about. As far as I remember, the majority of the controversy is about the animals killed on screen. So, for example, there's a scene where they disembowel a turtle for real and eat it all on screen. They kill some snakes and spiders, and in particular, the one that always sticks to me is there's a monkey they sort of cut the head open of, and then they messed up the take, so I had to get another monkey and do a second take.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's sad.
So I don't know, so what I also know is there's a most places you'll find Cannibal Holocaust tends to be like an animal cruelty free cut of it, which gets rid of a lot of that stuff. But obviously somewhere there is like the full cut. But anyway, so we were discussing this about like how killing animals for absolutely no reason at all on screen, especially when this was in 1980, where they were taken to court for having effects so convincing they thought they'd killed a human.
Wow.
So it's like, why couldn't they have used the same level of technical mastery and just faked the animals? Why even have the animals besides just pure shock? Because that's a lot of what that film tries to do.
Yeah. So where is that film? Where was that film made?
Where?
Yeah. Like what country or whatever.
I'm not sure where it was shot, but it's an American production, I'm pretty sure.
It's American, okay. Oh, that's interesting. Because there's, Old Boy.
Yes.
The Korean film. Because in that, the main character eats a live squid.
Yes, that's true. That's quite a recent film as well, relatively.
Yeah, that's 2003.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know, obviously it still happens. Like, did they need to have him eat a live squid? And, like, the actor was fine with it. And it's like, this is weird.
Well, I feel like, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's racist to say if that's a cultural thing, because I don't know. I genuinely don't know to what extent they eat live squids there.
Well, that's what I was going to say, is like, is it a cultural thing? But then they're obviously Americans.
I don't think so, because
not.
Well, I've seen stuff online. There was like some YouTuber who like eat live octopuses on camera, for the views, and so I can't believe it's like a massively accepted thing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. I don't.
It wouldn't be so
think
controversial. Yeah.
Plus, also the way in Old Boy that scene is done, it looks like it's not a usual request, because the whole point is like, I haven't eaten anything for decades or whatever. I need something. I want to kill something.
Yeah.
Sort of, Anyway, so that was one argument which we were pretty open and shut on. But then I rewatched the other day Andrei Rublev, which is one of Tarkovsky's films. By the way, fantastic film. You should see it. Everyone should see it. Don't care that it's 3 hours long. It's great.
Okay.
But anyway, so this is a film made in the Soviet Union in 1966, and they're doing a battle of the Tatars invading the city of Vladimir. Now, I don't know any Russian history, so if someone else can make sense of that, that's what I remember from it. Anyway,
Okay.
But there's a shot of a horse basically falling down a load of steps and then sort of getting impaled at the bottom.
Right.
And this is a real horse and they had to shoot it in the neck for the take to work for it to just fall down like that.
Oh my god.
Right. Now, here's the interesting bit, because I did some digging, because I literally watched this film like the day after I had this conversation with Poppy. And so the horse was taken from a slaughterhouse, and it was scheduled to be killed that day anyway.
Right.
And so they just took him, like, well, if it's going to die, we'll do it on the set. And, in theory, same net sort of, not profit, but,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is sort of the point of this conversation. It's what is that okay, do you reckon? Because
if it was going to die anyway, then I suppose. But then the argument is, like, the squid in Old Boy, was that going to die anyway? The turtle in Cannibal Holocaust, they don't have turtle slaughterhouses last time I checked.
Exactly. Well, this is the point I made, was like, so the turtle was like dragged out of the ocean and would have been fine, but like it would have survived if it wasn't for making the film.
Yeah.
While the horse was going to die anyway. But so what Poppy was saying was, even if the horse are going to die anyway, it was still technically killed for the film, and like just because it was going to be killed doesn't make it all right. Even though,
I don't know. I feel like there shouldn't be any animal cruelty at all.
No, absolutely not.
But
it's interesting to work out where the line's drawn, because I feel like Andrei Rublev there is sitting on a bit of a grey area.
Yeah, definitely. Of the three mentioned, it's probably the most acceptable.
Yeah, because it's still like the point is they're still killing an animal for a film, even if it was going to die anyway, was sort of the argument. But I thought it was an interesting start. I don't know what maybe our viewers will think of this. Feel free to email in if you've got any sort of reactions to that.
Here we go.
All right. I was going to save the actual address for later, but if you want to email us in, it's cinerambles@gmail.com.
Woo!
Yay! But so, on the other end, so I was also speaking about Apocalypse Now, which you haven't seen yet, have you?
Nope.
Right, that's going on the list. But so in Apocalypse Now, there's the tribe that they used as sort of extras for the end stuff in the sort of the cult. One night they were doing this ritual, and it's like, and they basically went to director Francis Ford Coppola, like, you're welcome to film us if you want, some B-roll for the end or whatever. And part of this ritual involves slaughtering a cattle. And from what what I've read, so Francis Ford Coppola was originally like really resistant to filming because he's like, well, I don't want to kill an animal for a film. But I think his wife convinced him, being like, well, no, because they're doing it anyway, and it cuts well with what happens in the end. Not spoiling here, but it works. It sort of visually has quite a strong meaning to it, and we both agreed that was okay because that wasn't being killed for the film as such. That was essentially documentary.
But then is that not the same thing as the horse then?
Well, no. So here's the thing: because the horse, even though the horse was going to be killed, it was going to be killed in a slaughterhouse. But the argument was they took it away from it, and even though it still died by the end of the day, it died via different means, and it was taken out to be killed for the film. While in Apocalypse Now, it was being killed in the same way, but we just happened to be rolling the cameras. I mean, I suppose arguably like in like Food Inc. and other food-related documentaries, when you see them like killing chickens on screen, and it's like, well, that's just a documentation of it, as opposed to it being done specifically for the setup of the film.
Okay, all right, I see. Yeah.
But yeah, but I mean, this is the debate because neither of us are infallible. I think it sort of comes down to your own morals and opinions. I think it's an interesting sort of scale of where you draw the line of what's okay. Because I personally, I'm not. I definitely think Andrei Rublev isn't the best. Obviously, again, I don't think it's an essential shot. But in terms of if you had to kill an animal on screen, I feel like that's possibly the best way you can do it while still being like an intentioned shot. But Apocalypse Now is probably the best way. But I mean, yeah, that's sort of the debate. So
that's interesting. I feel like, yeah, it's just up to your own morals, really. It's obviously, I mean, if we look at Call of the Wild again, it's obviously getting two people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Also, have you seen the behind-the-scenes footage for Call of the Wild?
I have not, but they had. Was it Andy Serkis or I just?
No, it wasn't Andy Serkis, but it was someone in a CGI suit, like with the balls and everything, and it is so funny. It is so funny to watch. You've got to watch it. The behind the scenes for Call of the Wild is hilarious.
I shall give that a watch.
I can't see, considering how much Harrison Ford kicks off about all these different things, I cannot see how he was so completely fine with some fucking dude in a gimp suit staring at him in this stupid little suit on his all fours looking like a complete tit. But
Harrison Ford's not that bad about CGI, is he?
No, well, CGI, but he I think he moans a lot on film sets about various things.
Well, I mean, he's supposedly quite difficult to work with, or at least that's the Blade Runner story.
Yeah. I think that's, or at least I think it was in Force Awakens, there was something about him being a pain on set.
Well, no, there's also something about, I mean, I think he specifically has a grudge against Star Wars and or its fans.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's understandable, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right. So, onto this, I guess, sort of a new section, Andrew's Horror Education, which I haven't got a witty title for yet.
Yeah, needs a better name.
Have you got one?
No.
Andrew's Horror Education it is.
That's a terrible name.
Fine. The Texas Andrew Massacre.
Also dreadful. I mean, I suppose that goes in the theme of
that's what I was trying to
12 Andrew Men.
12 Andrew Men was fantastic. And when we get to Lawrence of Arabia, you're going to love that part. I bet you can't guess what it is.
Yeah, so I watched Texas Chain Saw Massacre.
For those who don't know, who may be new listeners, last week we were discussing how Andrew has basically seen no horror films at all, except for 3.
I've seen, 3. That's quite a fair assumption.
So as a parallel series to our Andrew's film education, which we'll hopefully be getting back to once Andrew watches Lawrence of Arabia, we're doing Andrew's Horror Education, where we focus specifically on horror films. Specifically ones I think Andy might like after having seen Midsummer, which he now can't stop going on about.
I mean, okay.
I'm glad you like Midsummer.
I do like it. It was so weird because when I first watched it, I was like, no, I don't like this. And now I'm like, yes, this film is great.
Yeah.
So, Texas Chain Saw Massacre. It was okay. I think I didn't like it as much as... I don't know. I didn't know if I would like it or not. But basically, I didn't really like it. I thought it was okay. Like, I didn't hate it. I can see its merits. There are a few problems I had with it, and I will divulge into them. It's Texas Chain Saw Massacre, 1974?
4, yeah.
Yeah. It's about 5 youths.
Look how old you sound.
But I mean, that's what it says. 5 youths.
Those damned youths.
I mean, one of them looks about 40 years old. He also, I think, I can't remember his name in it, but he looks like the most stereotypical 70s man in existence. Who's got like the paisley shirt and the flared jeans and it's like chest hair and afro, and it just looks amazing. So yeah, the 5 youths are going across Texas in a camper van. One of them's in a wheelchair. They pick up a hitchhiker who's crazy and cuts himself and the dude in the wheelchair, and then he smears blood all over their van. And then they go to this house, and it's spooky, and then they all get killed.
Excellent. What a fantastic reading.
I mean, that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not Shakespeare.
So, I think my main problem with it was, I mean, spoilers. This is big spoilers. We said that before, didn't we? Anyway.
Yeah. Well. If you haven't seen it and care, there are spoiler links on YouTube now, and Spotify. You can just skip ahead by a chunk.
A bit.
Just go to the YouTube and look at the time codes. I don't know.
Yeah.
We need to work out a proper system for that.
Yeah. So my first problem with it was that, I don't know, you just don't get to know the characters, like, barely at all before they all fucking die. Like, they die so quickly as well. Like, I was shocked about how quickly 4 out of the 5 main characters died.
Well, it's quite a short film, isn't it? It's only like
it is short film.
70, 80 minutes?
Yeah, it was really short. I thought there was going to be another, half an hour on the end, and it just ends.
The other thing is, of course, it was quite cheaply made. So, and of course, every minute of film costed that back then. So a lot of those sort of early exploitation films are quite short.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, so you just don't get to know the characters. So when they all die, it's like, oh, okay. It's like you don't feel for any of them. I mean, eventually you do feel for Sally, who is the main character, the main girl. Eventually, but only because you've been with her for the whole film, 90% of which she is screaming, which is another one of my problems.
What, if she just screams non-stop?
Yeah. Like, there's a bit where she... Well, I love her reaction to things is to just jump out the fucking window. Look, I love that so much. Like, she does it twice, and it made me fucking burst out laughing both times because I just didn't expect her. I was like, oh shit, she's cornered, and she just fucking jumps out the window.
Strategy that works.
Yeah, I know. It worked twice, so fair enough on her. But yeah, there was a bit, so the first time she jumps out the window, she lands, and Leatherface has to turn around, go all the way back down the house and through the door. And she's got like a good, I don't know, 90 seconds or whatever.
Well, how mundane you made that chase sound. Just like, now I've got to go downstairs and unlock the door. God, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, my back's killing me with this chainsaw.
Yeah. If she'd just hidden, right, Leatherface probably wouldn't have found her and given up and gone back inside. But instead, she stands up, screams until he comes around the corner, then runs off screaming. And it's like, stop screaming for a second and you might be fine.
Andy, have you seen a slasher film before?
Yes, I know that's the whole point. But it's like, Jesus Christ, please, just stop screaming for 10 seconds. Pretty sure she only says about 4 words, and the rest of it is unintelligible screeching. Which is fine. Like, yeah, I get it. It's a slasher. Another problem I had with it is that it's so famous, and the iconography in that film is now so famous and so big and important that it's almost a caricature of itself.
Yeah.
So, it has this bit where he goes into the house and you see, like... Oh, sorry, she... Again, I can't remember any of the characters' names other than Sally and Leatherface, so this is great. But the other girl goes into the house into the spooky house, and she looks around this room, and there's like, oh, there's skulls everywhere, and there's like skeletal hands, and there's a sofa made out of body bits, and it's like, I know, like, maybe back then that would have been really, really spooky and scary, but right now this looks like a fucking Asda Halloween advert. And it, because obviously they can't get actual skulls and stuff, and you could say they just look fake, and it's like, this is so much of a caricature, because that is all of this. That iconography is so, indentured into our skulls as being Halloween and being all spooky, that I just couldn't get. It just looks like a Asda advert trying to sell you their Halloween merch.
I think Asda should recut Texas Chainsaw Massacre for advertising. I mean, that'd be an interesting new bit of spice to add to things.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you're right for the most part. It's been a little while since I've seen Texas, but I mean, I don't love it either, but I sort of respect it more than I enjoy it.
Yeah.
For me, it's in the same camp as Halloween, in that they're both 70s films and both so influential and pivotal to establishing modern horror that to watch them now, like you said, it seems so, because they're so protozoan in that genre, it seems like we've seen everything in them before, because they're that influential, but unfortunately to go back and watch them, they don't have quite the same impact because everything seems so generic.
Yeah.
Which
yeah,
is a great
definitely.
shame.
It felt like that, yeah.
I do enjoy Texas Chainsaw Massacre more than Halloween though, and mainly because so like I was saying last week, that last half hour where she's like having dinner with them, I don't know if it's to do with the like the set design as such, or the costumes and makeup or what, but something about that scene is so horrifically uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, that is. There was another thing, like comparing to Midsummer quickly. You know how I was talking about the lamentations in Midsummer?
Yeah.
And how that's used to comfort her. Whereas in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when she's screaming at the dinner table, she's like tied down, she's like absolutely screaming, like completely losing her shit. And the creepy dude and everyone else, they're just screaming with her as well. They're like screaming and they're like laughing, and it's like mocking her, and it's like, that's such a complete flip of the coin, because that's just obviously making everything worse for her.
Yeah.
I was like,
There's
that's
something
interesting.
about that scene that's so it's sort of, I don't know, it's something like at the like the design of it seems like so, like sort of so alien and so sort of unlike any, have you seen those pictures online of like they're AI generated to make it look like you should recognize them, but there's no discernible object in the image?
Right. No, I haven't seen them, but
okay, I'll send you some afterwards. I might link one in YouTube description as well, just for reference. But it's sort of, but like you look at it and you sort of get in this weird sort of mental panic, because it looks like you should be able to recognize something in this picture, but none of it looks like anything you've ever seen before, and your brain sort of goes into a bit of a frenzy. And the end of Texas Chainsaw reminds me of that. Like, there's something so horrific about the designs in that, but it just triggers some weird primal fear in you in the way that good horror should. And to the extent that I can't even like visually recall much of that scene, because it's almost blotted from my memory, because my brain was just so sort of frazzled by it.
Yeah.
Which I think is the mark of a great horror.
For me, like, by far the most uncomfortable, horrific part was like the grandpa, or whatever he was called, like the shriveled old husk of a person in the chair who they cut her finger and stick it in his mouth, and it's like that was by far the most uncomfortable and unsettling bit for me. And I don't know why. Like, he literally plunges a chainsaw into someone's face, and I was like, whatever, but he sticks a finger into an old man's mouth, and I was like, no.
Well, exactly, because that's the thing, because gore isn't actually that scary. It's gross, but it's not terrifying in the same way. But like that, I think that sort of plays on fears of like fears of germs and like the unclean, and also sort of the fear of the old and shriveled in a way. There's a lot of sort of little fears being mixed together there, which I think is probably actually the key to a lot of good horror, is mixing lots of sort of common fears into one sort of image.
Yeah. It was okay. So another thing I want to say is, I watched this thing, like Mark Kermode said about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, about it was in like his top 10 horror films of all time or whatever for him, like films that have actually scared him. And he said when he first saw it, the moment when you first see Leatherface, he got like actual chills, and it really scared him, and he like really vividly remembers that bit and it being really scary. So I was really ready for that bit to be really scary.
Well, if you watched it beforehand and you knew it's coming.
Well, no, I never watched that bit before. I just heard what Mark Kermode had said about it, right?
Right.
So that really, really over-egged that bit, because the first time you do see Leatherface, he sort of opens a door, grabs a dude, and shuts it again. And I was like, okay, that was the most scary bit for Mark Kermode, was it? I was like, how?
Well, yeah, but consider he watched that in 1974 as an impressionable teen.
Yeah, I suppose.
And again,
yeah.
this is going back to the problem with...
I can imagine in seeing that in 74, it would have been absolutely terrifying, because there would have been nothing else really like it.
Well, that's the thing you've got to consider with all this. Like, if you consider... Like, we were sort of talking about Breakfast at Tiffany's last week. Like, at the end of the 60s, sort of like counterculturalism. So, you know, the death of Hollywood is relatively new. And the closest we got to a slasher film before was Psycho, which is basically just the murder thriller. Like this, like everyone says Halloween is people say Psycho is the first slasher film, which isn't true, and then they'll say Halloween is the first proper one, which also isn't true because it's Texas Chain Saw Massacre, which predates Halloween.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, to see this in the day would have been like terrible, because you're right. There was nothing else really at all like it when it came out, and like to go from like what we would have been seeing in cinemas in the 60s to then a decade later going to something like that. You know, it's a terrifying. You know, 70s was really when like modern horror was invented. It was quite a lurch, really.
Yeah. I was also surprised about how little gore there was. Like, there was obviously there was a little bit, and I can imagine that in all the sequels and remakes they really hammed it up.
Oh yeah.
But it almost served to make it better, I think, in a way. I also feel like it must have been budgetary constraints. But it was good. Like the some of the stuff, you know, how a lot of the characters got killed off screen, which makes it more horrific.
So I'd say also it might be an issue with censorship as well, because of course when I was saying like it's sort of such a jump in horror, you've sort of got to do steps at a time. Of is the BBFC will throw the book at you, as they did with Last House on the Left, which came out 2 years later and is still one of like the most gory films ever made or something.
Right. Yeah, I think it was good at the time, but at the moment, you know, watching it and it just ended, and we were just sort of like, I don't know, unimpressed. We looked at each other. Me and George were just like, meh. You know, it was okay. Like, I definitely don't hate it, but
no. But and just to end off, do you like that last shot with Leatherface just swinging the chainsaw in the air and it's just in sunset?
Yes.
Isn't that such a great shot?
Oh, that's something very good positive. Like, some of the cinematography in that film was amazing.
Yeah, again, considering like the budget and like stuff, like they took some time to get some really nice shots in that film.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really artistic shots as well that just look amazing. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah. That's that.
That was Texas Chain Saw Massacre. And next week on Andrew's Horror Education, or whenever we next do this, should we do Rec?
Sure.
Yeah, so Rec, that's the Spanish horror film from 2007. So if you've got any reviews or comments about Rec you want us to talk about, you can email us again at the link I said earlier, because I'll get told off if I say it twice.
Do it. Say it again.
You can email us at cinerambles@gmail.com.
Yes. More.
You can't moan at me now.
Do you think that we should, having just seen that one, do you think we should watch the modern remake and see, you know, how different it is?
I mean, we can, but I don't like wasting my time.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was looking on IMDb at the ratings and everything, and the original's got like a 7.5, and the remake has like a 4.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Why is it such a drastic difference between the remake? Is it just because it's bad, because they're doing something that in the day was original and now is just I don't know, poor? What do you think?
Okay, so I haven't seen the sequel, I can't comment on it specifically, but I mean, so a lot of the 70s like classic, like the founding fathers of horror, if you'd like to think, or modern horror at least, a lot of them got like gory remakes in the early 2000s, like Last House on the Left got one, and Hills Have Eyes was another one that got it. And also Friday the 13th as well, but that's 80s. But I mean, like, and I think the thing is, because these are like the sort of founding films of modern horror, and they invented so much, and you know, they're in almost inextricably products of their time, but in the sense of like remaking it, there's no point because they don't have like as I was saying, they don't really have the same relevance nowadays. Which I
Yeah,
suppose you could say is an argument to remake them. The point is by taking something that like invented the genre and then just doing it, but then adding gore, you know,
yeah,
it doesn't really achieve much. It sort of devalues it and like it doesn't really respect what the original was doing. Just being like, oh, that's we'll just take that and paint red all over it.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it
That's
doesn't
fair.
quite apply with Last House on the Left, which is always gory. And I think if anything, the remake's less gory. But
Well,
I feel like this is gearing up to us watching Last House on the Left.
don't know.
Which I've got supposedly uncut version, which is I mean, Last House on the Left is an interesting one in terms of being cut. Because I mean, there's a lot. That's the problem with a lot of video nasties and stuff is that you'll find copies which say uncut, but uncut is not like a legally protected phrase, so you can sort of say that with anything, and it's very difficult to find true uncut. But you have to often Google and actually see if the BBFC has released a work uncut or if they're lying. And I think Last House on the Left is now uncut, but it was only done like the other year. But I think as far as I've been able to research, my version I think is uncut, but I don't know.
You think it's uncut?
Again, it's difficult to tell, but it's amazing that things like Last House on the Left is like are still being held back by censors. Say like there's that they even like quite recently they were having like sort of hearings on it, trying to release it uncut, and then still like doubling down and being like, no, we're going to release it with more cuts.
I don't really mind gore that much. Like gore is fine. Like it can be shocking, I suppose. But have you seen like Brain Dead?
No, I know you watched it. I'm still
Have seen Brain Dead.
too much of a puss to see it.
It's not bad at all. Like it's funny. It's not. It's there's no.
Well, no, it's a horror comedy, isn't it? So it's quite
yeah,
sort of
but it's much more comedy than anything else. Like I'd just say it's a dark comedy. I wouldn't. It's got very very few horror elements, and the gore is obviously absolutely mad, but to the point where it's so over the top that it is funny. You know.
So you've hit on an interesting point there in terms of the definition of a horror comedy. Because then, like, does a horror comedy have to be scary to be a horror comedy?
Don't know. Well, what is it? Is it? There's a film that is Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That's it.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
Because that's a horror comedy, and that's got a lot of horror elements in it. But again, I'd say that's just a comedy.
Okay, so like, Shaun of the Dead is often like the most famous and well-known horror comedy. But like, I don't find it scary, but it's still a horror because it takes the genre trappings of horror, but just with a comedic spin on it, but sort of parodied. But
Then again, when you think of Shaun of the Dead, I mean, Shaun of the Dead is very similar to Brain Dead because they're both zombie-based horror comedy films. But I'd say they were both just comedies, like with horror elements, I suppose.
Is that not what a horror comedy is?
Well, yeah, I suppose, but they are. I don't know. It just there's such a complete juxtaposition of each other that they always end up being more comedic than horrific.
Well, yeah. I mean, so my point is basically because you seem to think a horror comedy has to be scary for it to be defined as horror comedy, but if it's a comedy, it's unlikely to be scary. Well, I think because there's more to horror than just being scary. There's lots of genre elements and stuff. And I think anything that is basically a horror... Because Shaun of the Dead is still a horror film, even though it's funny. And Brain Dead, I'm pretty sure, is still a horror film, even though it's funny. Like, a dark comedy is like The Nice Guys or something.
Yeah.
But, just because they're not scary doesn't mean they're not horror.
I suppose they are horror. Yeah, I mean, I suppose you're right. It's just... But the way you're saying, like, oh, you're too afraid to watch it because you don't want to be spooked, but it's like you won't be spooked because they're not scary at all. Like they
I didn't say that.
You did.
When?
You literally, when we talk about Brain Dead, you were like, I'm too much of a puss to watch it.
Yeah, I said that. That's about me. That's because I don't like gore.
Yeah. Oh, because you don't like gore.
Yeah. No, I'm not a massive fan of watching jumpy films in a cinema just because it's a bit too everywhere. Like, and because I really hate jump scares. Like, I don't enjoy being jump scared. And most horror films nowadays, as I was saying, tend to be jump scary.
Yeah.
But in terms of like proper horror, I have no real. I do get scared, but I enjoy it. Like,
yeah,
in a way, Yeah, no, gore's the only thing that really bothers me, and even then it has to be quite extreme.
But yeah, I mean, it's so completely stupid that it's funny.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'll watch it one day.
you should watch it. It's good. It's weird, but it's funny, and it's 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 just weird. Okay, I've got a fundamental. If you want to stick one of them on.
Okay.
Okay. Now I've got another Harry Potter one, but I feel like I've done so many Harry Potter ones. Should I do the other thing?
Do whichever one you're most prepared for. I mean, you were going to do his Dark Materials the other week, and we ran out of time, weren't you?
Yeah. Did you watch it?
I was going to, I mean, I didn't get around to it, but I do still plan to watch the series.
The series is good. It is
Yeah,
good.
I heard good things.
It's good, but the book is way better.
Yeah, well,
as
that's
is the
always
case.
the way, isn't it?
But it's a much, much better adaptation than the film was. And I think that's what everyone's putting their pants about. Because it's
just the thing about, like, fans of books, they sort of, because they've been treated so badly by the film industry, whenever there's like a adaptation that's even like halfway faithful, everyone creams themselves because they're just not used to being treated this way.
Well, and that's fair enough. Like, the film was so fucking terrible. They even changed the fucking name because they're stupid. And the series is good. Like, it's not amazing. There were a couple of bits in the series that I was like, meh. You know, like the child acting is questionable at points. But it's got two... You know, James McAvoy is very, very good, and Ruth Wilson is also very, very, very good. That it's like, okay, yeah, you know, I can see why people really like this, but I didn't like it as much as everyone else seemed to. But that's because I had just read the book, and the book is really, really good.
But I'm trying to think what like the best film adaptation of a book is that I've seen.
That you've seen?
Wow. I don't know. I'm just trying to think, because obviously the stigma is most film adaptations are worse than the book. But there's definitely some which are better as films. I'm trying to think of some. There was one I was thinking about recently.
Well, Scott Pilgrim. So Scott Pilgrim is 7 comic books. And I read all the comic. The comic books are really easy to read, actually, and they're really good. Up until, like, the last few, where the film changes it, like Edgar Wright changed it to make it less weird, and the less weird ending is so much better, like, genuinely. The book ending is...
But Andy, you like weird now.
No, but the book ending is so far out of left field, and there's no, like, setup for it at all, that it just doesn't make any sense, and it's really unsatisfying, and just like, okay, what the fuck? This is weird, why has this happened? Whereas Edgar Wright's ending is just way better and superior, and you know, it's much more entertaining to watch. Which is, you know, I was going to do a fundamental about that. So why not? Here we go.
We can do it now.
Well, I mean, we're there now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, because basically I really like the film, and I feel like the film is underrated because no one really talks about it anymore.
No, it's sort of the forgotten Edgar Wright film, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah. But it works really well. And he's adapted the source material very well, and like as I said, he's made a very positive change, I think. He's also done really well to make seven books into one film and make it work and flow really well.
And not be like 5 hours long.
Yeah, and the pacing is really good. And, you know, it just works. But also, I feel like his visual style suits the comic book's comedic style very, very well as well.
Yeah. Well, I think Edgar Wright's like sort of use of editing and stuff is definitely, I think, at least comic book inspired to some degree, because there's a very much of like an over exaggeration of his like camera moves and stuff, like his crash zooms and all that. So I think it's probably quite a good fit as a director. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like the casting is fantastic on everyone, basically. Sorry, just fangirling over Scott Pilgrim here. Anyway, in the last comic book, it turns out that Ramona Flowers, who is Scott's girlfriend, and her ex-boyfriend, there's the League of Exes, or what they are, and to go out with Ramona, Scott has to defeat all 7 of them. And the last one is Gideon, and he is, like super evil. He's G-Man.
See, it's because of Gravity Falls. When you say Gideon, I just think of Gideon from Gravity Falls.
Yeah. yeah, he's super evil, and he's like sets up the League of X's or whatever, and he's got like a inhibitor chip in the back of Ramona's head, and it just doesn't really make sense. Like, I don't really know what his motivation was, but he wants to put her in like the girlfriend machine. Or whatever yeah, exactly. There's like a girlfriend machine. I don't know, but there's like two or three other. I don't know. But there's like
Give me more information.
There's like 2 or 3 other girls in there, and it's so
disturbing.
Exactly. It's
Is
so
this like
weird.
some weird SCP-914 thing? We just shove girls in and one like Supergirl comes out at the end or something.
But there's like the girlfriend machine, and I don't understand the point of it. But he wants to like capture Ramona and put her in there so he can keep her forever or whatever. It's like he wants to cryogenically freeze them so he can own her forever. Is essentially what I think is the point.
Right. And he named it the girlfriend machine.
Oh no, it's not called the girlfriend. It might be called the girlfriend machine. I've not got a clue. I can't remember. But there's the girlfriend machine, and basically, him and Scott have this fight, and Scott eventually wins and gets Ramona flowers, right?
Right.
But there's this much more like, they just have this conversation, and it's really weird, and it's just like, what the fuck is going on? I have not a clue. I don't understand anything that's just happened. All I know is that at the end of it, Scott won, Whereas in the film, they have like this final battle, and it's really good, and Scott goes to Gideon's club, and they have this sword fight, and it's like, oh, Scott got the power of love, but it's not quite enough to beat Gideon, and so he gets like an extra life and gets to reset and has another go, and it's like, but this time he does it for, there's a much better moral lesson there. Also, there isn't the girlfriend machine. But there's still the inhibitor chip in the back of Ramona's head.
What does the inhibitor chip do? Is this like a sort of a mind control thing?
It stops Ramona from being able to leave Gideon, I think.
What, romantically or physically leave the room?
Like she always wants to be near him or something. Like, she hates him, but she always, because of this chip, she always wants to be near him, like with him,
Right.
And she manages to get away, but then Gideon finds her. Whatever, there's loads of stuff. And then, but so in the film, you just get this cool sword fight, and there's like this nice moral lesson, and you still have the happy ending without all this fucking weird bullshit. And it feels, the other thing is, like, there's video games are obviously a big theme throughout, and the final battle in the film feels like a video game boss battle.
Yeah.
Whereas in the comic book, it's like, what the anime fuck am I watching right now? Or reading, I guess.
So is this a commonly sort of do most other fans accept that the film ending's better than the books, or is this just you? Or is this like,
I'm not really sure, actually. I know that I prefer that ending. I haven't really looked it up. No one seems to really complain about it or talk about it at all.
because my normal question at the end of these is and why do you think the change was made? But like, do you reckon the change was made literally because the ending of the comic book was badly received? Or...
Yeah, I think it must have been, because I can't see why. I don't know. But also, yeah, it must have been badly received, and it's confusing. It wouldn't have worked on screen at all, I don't think. Not without, it would just be so weird. But the other thing is, like, the final battle with, like, Gideon is built up really well in the comic book and in the film. Like, who is G-Man? Who is G? Oh, they go to this club and it's owned by the G-Man. And, there's this whole thing about the League of X's and all that stuff. And they lead all up to this, and the film and the comic book both do this really well. So that the payoff is that when you meet G-Man and you have this final fight, it makes sense. But there is no lead up to the fucking girlfriend machine at all. So when he just plops that out in front of you, you're like, what the fuck is this?
I'm very tempted to name this episode The Girlfriend Machine now.
Okay. Yeah, it's just confusing and weird. Also, another small change they make, but it does make a big difference, is in the comic book, I think, takes place over a longer period of time. which is, you know, fine. Like, they've got to cut a lot out for the film to make sense. But they cut out Scott's, like, depressed in the film, in the comic book, because Ramona's left him, and he's, like, really sad, and all he does is sit and play video games all day.
And use his girlfriend machine. Everyone has one.
Everyone's got a girlfriend machine.
Get yours today.
And they cut that out because it makes you... I don't know, I don't really like the 7th book, because it's, like, makes you not really like Scott. Like, in the film you sympathise for him, you're like, you know, he does this for Ramona, and then he's like, oh, actually, it's better to do it for yourself, like, the self-respect is what wins in the day, or whatever. Whereas in the comic book, he's just mopey around, and he's, like, depressed, and he's refusing to go out and fight for himself, and it's, like, for the first half of the comic book, and it's like, well, all the respect and love we have for this character is being rapidly deteriorated in the first half of the last comic book, you know? And it's, like, such a strange opening for the end. Like, I've got nothing against him trying to make you see the characters in a different way or whatever before the final thing. Like, you know, having a you know, like how Han Solo fucks off and then he comes back at the end to help Luke.
Yeah.
You know, having that I don't know, what would you call that, revelation of the characters coming back to then do the right thing. Is that what you call it? I don't know.
Oh, there is a word.
There is a word.
Now you've asked me to name it. I now can't think what it is. I mean, I want to say return, but that's probably a smarter word for it than that. I'll think about it.
You know what I mean, though.
Yeah. Well, it's all like as well. Like you think like Back to the Future when when oh god, I can't remember the names. when Lorraine's being like assaulted by Biff and George walks away, and there's a moment like, will he turn back or not? It's all like that in a way.
Yeah.
It's a kind of like, oh, you think he's given up, and it's like, oh no, but then it's like, oh no, he's coming back. Yeah.
Like, that's such a brilliant character moment for him. But it's really out of character for Scott, because, you know, for 6 comic books he's been this really solid, fun character, and then just randomly for the first half of the last comic book he's a completely different character who is unlikable. And it's like, why are you making your main character, who is beloved, not fun to be with, you know?
Yeah.
It's just an interesting change that they just got rid of almost entirely. Didn't completely get rid of it. Like, there's a few scenes where he's, you know, a bit down, but it doesn't drag on. Yeah, it doesn't drag on for so long that you're starting to not like the main character, you know? But yeah. There's also a few changes that they made that was definitely for the better. They got rid of a lot of the weirder aspects of the comic books, which is fine, because it's, you know, I guess it was for a wider audience. Like, there's this whole thing about Ramona has an alternate dimension in her handbag, or a pocket dimension, I guess, or a handbag dimension.
What's the ultimate about dimension?
Not alternate, like, yeah, like a pocket
dimension.
Alternate,
not ultimate, right?
Oh, not ultimate, no, alternate.
The ultimate dimension.
The ultimate.
No other dimension compares. Yeah. You've seen 1, 2, and 3D, and you've even heard of 4D, but this is the ultimate D. Wait, no, that's not one.
Oh my god. Wow. Okay. Amazing.
And on that note...
Okay.
Oh. Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's podcast. You have been listening to Ciné Rambles with Nick.
And Andrew.
You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ciné Rambles Official, and you can follow us on Twitter at Ciné Rambles. And for more information, you can read the blog over at cinerambles.blogspot.com. The Star Wars Ranked Retrospective is up there at the moment. Part 3 should be coming soon. And of course, you can always send us your opinions, your responses, your reviews, any suggestions or questions to cinerambles@gmail.com. So Andy, have you got any final remarks?
check out Nick's Ultimate D.
Why did I know it was going to be that?
It had to be, surely.
That's what you get from the girlfriend machine. That's what it's crafting. The ultimate D. Good night.
Goodbye.